They say the devil wears Prada. In Veridian, he wears Armani and calls you darling while signing your death warrant. I should know I married him to save my father's life. Now I'm standing at the Veridian annual gala in a dress that costs more than a human life, realizing I'm not the only woman in this ballroom who sold her soul. The woman in emerald green across the room? She's married to the devil's right hand. And tonight, we're going to find out if two damned women can save each other. The Veridian annual gala shimmered like a beautiful trap. Crystal chandeliers scattered fractured light across faces that smiled too perfectly, voices that laughed too easily, hands that had signed too many backroom deals to ever be truly clean. I stood in the center of it all, wrapped in crimson silk that cost more than my father's factory workers earned in a year, feeling the weight of diamonds against my throat like an executioner's rope dressed up for high society. I'm Chandler Moretti, and 6 months ago, I made a choice that killed the woman I used to be. The choice had a name: Gabriel Vega, my husband, the man whose arm I was currently not touching, despite standing close enough to smell his expensive cologne. The man whose foundation was hosting this glittering charity event, even as his real business flooded Veridian's poorest neighborhoods with poison. The man who smiled for magazine covers while his hand signed death warrants over breakfast. Darling, you look pale. Gabriel's voice was silk over steel, his hand finding the small of my back with possessive ease. Perhaps some air? Before I could manufacture an excuse, I saw her. Across the ballroom, emerald green among the sea of black tuxedos and champagne gowns. Freya Stein. The name hit me like a physical blow, not just recognition, but something deeper. Freya, who I'd promised to stay friends with forever at summer camp when we were 12. Freya, who'd moved in different circles as we grew up, her trajectory shooting toward City Hall while mine spiraled down into obligation and sacrifice. Freya, who was now Veridian's golden girl, the political star poised to become our youngest mayor. Freya, who was standing beside Cyrus Serrano. My blood turned to ice. I knew that name. I knew it because I'd found it in Gabriel's private files 3 weeks ago, copied onto the flash drive currently hidden in the lining of my evening bag. Cyrus Serrano, Gabriel's right hand, his enforcer, the man who made problems disappear, the man Gabriel called his closest friend. Our eyes met across the ballroom. Recognition flashed between us, not just of childhood friendship, but something else. Something desperate and terrified and trapped. In that instant, I saw past her perfect smile, her confident posture, her carefully cultivated image. I saw exhaustion. I saw fear. I saw myself. She knows. The realization crashed over me with crystalline certainty. Freya knows what Cyrus is, what Gabriel is. She's playing the same role I am. The dutiful wife, the beautiful accessory, the woman who stands beside a monster and smiles for the cameras while dying inside. Gabriel was speaking to Cyrus now, the men clasping hands with easy familiarity. Chandler, you remember Cyrus? And this is his wife, Freya. She's going to save our city, isn't she? The irony in his voice was subtle enough to be deniable, sharp enough to draw blood. It's lovely to meet you. I lied, shaking Freya's hand. Her fingers were cold, her grip firm, but trembling almost imperceptibly. Ladies' room? Freya mouthed silently, her lips barely moving. I nodded, the gesture so small Gabriel wouldn't notice, but Freya did. Because she was watching for it the same way I was watching her, the way prisoners watch for escape routes, the way drowning women watch for life rafts. Excuse me, I said to Gabriel, already turning away. I need to fix my lipstick. What I needed was to talk to the only other woman in Veridian who might understand what it meant to love a man who destroyed lives, to sleep beside someone whose hands you couldn't bear to think about, to smile through dinners where the business discussed was measured in bodies. 6 months ago, I made a devil's bargain to save my father. Tonight, I was about to find out if I could save myself. 6 months earlier, I woke up in a prison made of Egyptian cotton and Italian marble. The sheets were fret, 1,500 thread count. The morning light filtered through custom silk curtains that cost more than a car. Beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, Veridian City spread out below like a kingdom, and I was supposed to be its queen. Instead, I was its most expensively kept prisoner. Gabriel's side of the bed was cold. Of course it was. He'd left hours ago for his business meetings, the kind that required leaving before dawn and returning after dark, the kind he never discussed over breakfast. I lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, trying to remember what it felt like to wake up as someone other than Mrs. Gabriel Vega. The memory wouldn't come. My morning routine was a performance I'd perfected. Shower in the marble bathroom where every fixture was gold-plated. Choose from a walk-in closet full of designer labels I'd never asked for. Apply makeup with hands that had learned not to shake. The woman in the mirror looked like she belonged in this penthouse, like she'd been born to wear Chanel and diamonds for breakfast. She was a stranger. I opened the bedroom door to find Vincent, my husband's security detail, standing exactly where he always stood. He nodded politely. But we both knew what he really was. Not a bodyguard. A guard. Period. My phone sat on the nightstand where I'd left it, fully charged, fully monitored, every call logged, every text read, every movement through this gilded cage carefully documented. The tablet on the kitchen counter showed the morning news. I scrolled through headlines while Mrs. Chen, our housekeeper, prepared breakfast I wouldn't eat. Then I saw it. Moretti Industrial Complex closes permanently, 200 jobs lost. My father's factory. The reason I was here. The memory hit me like a fist to the chest. 6 months ago, I'd sat in my father's office while Antonio Moretti, the man who'd built an industrial empire with his bare hands, explained how he'd destroyed it with bad decisions and worse debts. The creditors weren't banks. They were the kind of people who broke more than credit scores. "There's a solution," he'd said, not meeting my eyes. He'd never been good at looking at me, his daughter, his disappointing child who'd chosen linguistics over business, who'd wanted to work for the UN instead of learning to run factories. Gabriel Vega had walked in then, younger than I'd expected, devastatingly handsome in a way that felt dangerous. He'd smiled at me like he already owned me, because in every way that mattered, he did. "Marry me," he'd said, as casually as ordering coffee. "I'll absorb your father's debt, save the company, your family keeps their reputation." He'd paused. "You'd be doing them a great service." I'd looked at my father, waiting for him to object, to tell this stranger that his daughter wasn't for sale. Antonio had simply nodded. "It's a good offer, Chandler." That night, I'd met Morgan Vance at our favorite coffee shop, the one near the courthouse where he worked as a prosecutor. Morgan, with his earnest eyes and his belief that the system could be fixed, that good people could win if they just fought hard enough. Morgan, who I'd loved since college, who I'd imagined a future with, that looked nothing like penthouses and security guards. "Don't do this," he'd begged, holding my hands across a table sticky with spilled sugar. "We'll find another way. I'll help you, please, Chandler." But there was no other way. Not one that didn't end with my father dead and my family destroyed. So I'd kissed Morgan goodbye, memorizing the taste of freedom, and 3 weeks later I'd walked down an aisle wearing $50,000 of lace and regret. Now, 6 months into my sentence, I attended a charity luncheon at the Veridian Plaza. Women air-kissed my cheeks and complimented my Valentino dress, my Cartier bracelet, my powerful husband who donated so generously to causes he'd probably never heard of. I smiled and nodded, the perfect accessory, while checking my phone under the table. Another overdose, the third this week. All in the same neighborhood, the industrial district where my father's factory used to employ hundreds, where Gabriel's people now distributed poison that destroyed families as efficiently as my father's debts had destroyed ours. That evening, Gabriel came home with roses, and that smile that made socialites weak-kneed. "How was your day, darling?" He kissed my cheek, smelling of expensive cologne and secrets. "Fine," I lied. "There's been more of those overdoses. In the old factory district." His expression shifted, warmth draining like water from a cracked glass. "The city has always had problems, darling. That's why people like me are necessary to provide order." He said it like he believed it. Maybe he did. Later, after he fell asleep, I retrieved the burner phone from its hiding place, in a false bottom of my jewelry box. My fingers found the familiar number in the dark. I typed, "Still here, still waiting." 3 dots appeared. Then, "Soon. I promise. M." I deleted the conversation and put the phone back. Tomorrow I'd wake up in this beautiful prison again. Tomorrow I'd play the perfect wife again. Tomorrow I'd smile while the city bled. But tonight, for just a moment, I let myself remember what hope felt like. Before we continue, I'd love to know where in the world are you listening to this story from. Drop a comment letting me know your city or country, and please subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. While Chandler Moretti was learning to survive in her gilded cage, I was still living in a beautiful dream. My name is Freya Stein, and 6 months before that gala, I still believed in fairy tales. Veridian deserves better. My voice rang out across the town square, amplified by speakers and adrenaline. 300 faces looked back at me, and I felt that electric current of connection, of possibility. We deserve leaders who work for us, not for the highest bidder. We deserve a city where our children are safe, where our neighborhoods thrive, where justice isn't a luxury only the wealthy can afford. The crowd roared. I felt invincible. From the front row, Cyrus Serrano, my husband, my high school sweetheart, my entire world watched with that smile that still made my heart skip after 15 years. When I finished, when the applause finally died down and my campaign manager swept me away for photos, Cyrus caught my hand and pulled me close. "You're going to change this city," he whispered against my temple. "I've always known it. From the moment I met you in sophomore English, I knew you were going to do something extraordinary." God, I loved him. Loved the way he still looked at me like I was the only woman in any room. Loved how he'd worked 2 jobs to put me through law school while building his own business. Loved that he remembered my coffee order, my mother's birthday, the exact date of every milestone in my political career. We'd married young, 22, fresh out of college, everyone saying we were too young, too naive. But we'd proved them wrong, built a life together, shared dreams of making Veridian better, cleaner, safer. In every interview, I called him my rock, my greatest supporter, the man who made everything possible. I believed every word. 3 weeks later, I was working late at City Hall, finalizing my campaign strategy for the mayoral race. The polls had me ahead, but not by enough. Not yet. I needed the preliminary crime reduction reports from last quarter hard data to show voters I understood the city's problems and had real solutions. The reports were at home. I'd been so scattered lately, so focused on the campaign that I'd left them on my desk in our brownstone. It was past midnight when I pulled into our driveway, the house dark except for a light in Cyrus's study. I let myself in quietly, not wanting to disturb him if he was on a work call. His import-export business often dealt with clients in different time zones. I was crossing through the hallway when I heard his voice. But it wasn't the voice I knew. Wasn't the warm, gentle tone he used with me, with waiters, with strangers on the street. This voice was ice. This voice was a blade. "I don't care about his family." A pause. "The message needs to be clear. Make it hurt." I froze in the darkness, my hand still on the banister. Through the crack in the study door, I could see his silhouette, phone pressed to his ear, shoulders rigid with an authority I'd never witnessed. "If he talks to the police again, we move to permanent solutions." "No," I said, "permanent. Do you understand?" My heart was a drum in my chest. This had to be a misunderstanding. A difficult employee situation. A problem client. Cyrus ran a legitimate business. He went to church on Sundays. He volunteered at the youth center. I backed away silently, grabbed my reports from the home office, and left the way I'd come. I sat in my car for 10 minutes before I could steady my hands enough to drive. Over the next few days, I told myself I'd misunderstood. But I couldn't stop noticing things. The late-night calls Cyrus took in another room, the way he'd startle when I entered unexpectedly, the thick envelope of cash I'd found in his jacket pocket when taking it to the cleaners, the men in expensive suits who looked wrong, who had violent eyes and dangerous postures meeting him at restaurants I'd thought were our special places. My assistant, sweet 23-year-old Jessica, mentioned it casually over coffee. "I saw your husband yesterday, having lunch at Salvatore's. He was with Gabriel Vega's people." Gabriel Vega, the name that had been circulating in whispers at City Hall. The businessman everyone suspected of running the syndicate, though nothing had ever been proven. The man whose charitable donations were as generous as his alleged criminal empire was vast. I felt the world tilt. 2 nights later, I followed my husband, hated myself for it, even as I did it. Watched him drive to the warehouse district, park beside a black SUV I didn't recognize. I stayed back, hidden in shadows, and watched through a grimy window as Cyrus Serrano, the man who'd promised to love and cherish me, who'd held me while I cried about the violence destroying our city, stood beside Gabriel Vega himself. Watched money change hands. Watched guns being loaded, checked, distributed like party favors. Watched a man I didn't recognize get dragged into the center of the warehouse. Watched Cyrus's face remain impassive as fists fell, as blood spattered concrete, as screams echoed off metal walls. The man I loved was a monster. I drove home in a daze, arriving 20 minutes before he did. I was in the kitchen, staring at nothing, when I heard his key in the lock. Hey, beautiful. Cyrus appeared with takeout bags and that smile I'd loved since I was 16. He kissed my forehead, warm and familiar. Long day at City Hall? I got your favorite tie from that place you love. Perfect, I heard myself say. You always know exactly what I need. He pulled me close, and I let him, breathing in his familiar scent while my mind screamed. My political career, my reputation, my entire life, built on a foundation of lies, married to a man I didn't know at all. I love you, he said, the way he said it every night. I love you too, I lied, for the first time in 15 years. And somewhere across the city, another woman trapped in a beautiful lie was sending secret messages to someone who remembered her before the cage closed. We just didn't know about each other yet. 2 weeks can change everything. 2 weeks of living with secrets that burn like acid. 2 weeks of smiling at monsters across breakfast tables. 2 weeks of learning that the man you married or were forced to marry is exactly as dangerous as you feared, or worse than you ever imagined. 2 weeks was all it took for both of us to reach our breaking point. The Humanitarian Foundation Gala was Veridian's social event of the season, which is a fancy way of saying it was where rich people wore expensive clothes to feel better about being rich. The venue was spectacular, the grand ballroom at the Veridian Plaza, dripping with crystal and false promises. Gabriel had been looking forward to it for weeks. Apparently nothing says, "I'm definitely not a crime lord," quite like hosting a charity event. I arrived on his arm, wrapped in sapphire blue silk that Gabriel had selected because it brought out my eyes. What it really did was make me visible, identifiable. The perfect accessory to legitimize a criminal empire. Gabriel was in his element, working the room with practiced charm, shaking hands with city councilmen and business moguls who either worked for him or feared him. Sometimes both. I was scanning the crowd for the nearest exit, always my first priority at these things when I saw her. Emerald green, honey blonde hair in an elegant updo, a smile that looked perfect until you noticed it didn't reach her eyes. And suddenly I was 12 years old again, at Camp Pinewood, making friendship bracelets and promising Freya Stein we'd stay best friends forever. Life, as it turns out, had other plans. We drifted apart the way childhood friends do. I went to private schools and studied linguistics, drowning in my father's expectations. She went into politics, all fire and idealism, determined to save the world. I'd followed her career from a distance, the articles about Veridian's rising political star, the youngest mayoral candidate in the city's history, the woman who was going to clean up corruption. The irony was almost funny. Almost. Our eyes met across the ballroom, and something electric passed between us. Recognition, yes, but also something darker, something desperate. In that instant, I saw past the polished politician exterior. I saw exhaustion. I saw terror barely contained. I saw myself reflected back at me. She knows. The thought hit me with crystalline clarity. She knows what her husband is. Because Freya Stein was standing beside Cyrus Serrano, and I'd seen that name often enough in Gabriel's private files to know exactly what it meant. Ah, Cyrus. Gabriel's hand on my back steered me toward them, possessive and inescapable. Perfect timing. I want you to meet my wife. Cyrus turned, and up close he looked exactly like what he was, handsome, charming, and absolutely lethal. He smiled at me with warmth that didn't touch his eyes. Mrs. Vega, what a pleasure. This is my wife, Freya. Actually, we've met, Freya said, and her voice was steady even though I could see her pulse hammering in her throat. Though it's been years. Summer camp, wasn't it? Camp Pinewood? Oh my God, yes. I kept my voice light, cocktail party bright. I can't believe you remember. Small world, Gabriel said, but he was watching us both with an intensity that made my spine stiffen. Tiny, Cyrus agreed. Freya's told me all about her childhood. High achiever even then, apparently. He squeezed her shoulder, and I saw her fight not to flinch. The men launched into conversation about business, their business, the kind that required coded language and careful omissions. Gabriel mentioned the waterfront project, and Cyrus talked about handling the logistics. To anyone listening, it sounded like legitimate development talk. I knew it meant drugs, territory, violence measured in body counts. I caught Freya's eye, mouthed, powder room. She nodded, so subtle Gabriel wouldn't notice, but I did. Because she was watching for it the same way I was, the way prisoners watch for escape routes. Excuse me, gentlemen, I said, with the smile I'd perfected over 6 months of captivity. I need to fix my lipstick. Me too, Freya added. Those photographs earlier were brutal. I'm sure I look terrible. You look beautiful, Cyrus said, kissing her cheek. And I saw something flicker across Freya's face that might have been grief. The ladies' room was blessedly empty, all marble and gold fixtures and the kind of luxury that felt obscene. I checked the stalls anyway while Freya locked the door. When I turned back, we stared at each other for a long moment. I can't believe it's you, she said finally. I can't believe you married Cyrus Serrano. I can't believe you married Gabriel Vega. Her laugh was borderline hysterical. What are the odds? Veridian's full of men, and we somehow both end up with the two running the syndicate? I didn't exactly have a choice, I said. My father's debts. I chose mine. Her voice cracked. I chose him. Loved him since I was 16. Found out 2 weeks ago that my husband is a monster. 6 months for me. Well, I knew what Gabriel was before I married him. I just didn't know I'd be this trapped. We looked at each other, two women in designer gowns, standing in a bathroom that cost more than most people's homes, married to men who would kill us without hesitation if we became inconvenient. You know who Gabriel really is, right? I asked. What he does. Cyrus is his enforcer. Freya's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I saw him, at a warehouse. There was blood, and Gabriel was there. And my husband just... She stopped, swallowed hard. Everything I've built, my career, it's all based on a lie. Everything I gave up was for nothing. My father's company closed anyway. Gabriel got what he wanted. Silence fell between us, heavy with implications. What if... Freya started, then stopped, started again. What if we could stop them? They'd kill us. They might kill us anyway. At least this way we'd go down fighting. I thought about the flash drive hidden in my apartment. About Morgan's messages. About 6 months of playing the dutiful wife while gathering evidence I hadn't known what to do with. I have access to Gabriel's files, I said slowly. Financial records, communications. I have political connections. People at City Hall, in law enforcement. People who are clean. Freya stepped closer. Chandler, we could actually do this. Together. It was insane. It was suicide. It was the first thing in 6 months that felt like hope. If they suspect for even a second. We're dead, Freya finished. I know. But we're already dying, aren't we? Just slower. I pulled out my phone, opened to a new contact. This is a burner number. Text me. We'll figure out how to meet without being followed. She did the same, fingers flying over her screen. We have to be incredibly careful. Obviously, I laughed, and it sounded slightly unhinged. I can't believe we're planning to take down the syndicate in a bathroom. I can't believe I'm doing this with my summer camp best friend. We did promise to stick together forever. Pretty sure we meant through breakups and bad haircuts, not organized crime. The absurdity of it hit us both at once. We started laughing, trying to muffle it, two women on the edge of hysteria or revolution, or both. We should get back, I said finally, before they notice. Right. Wouldn't want our murderous husbands to worry. We checked our makeup, composed our faces back into the masks we'd been wearing. At the door, Freya caught my hand. Thank you, she whispered, for making me feel less alone. Thank you for giving me a reason to fight. We returned to the gala separately, 3 minutes apart. I found Gabriel holding court with the mayor, playing the benevolent philanthropist. He pulled me close, kissed my temple. Have fun catching up with your old friend? It was lovely, I lied, smiling up at him. Small world. Across the room, I watched Freya slip back to Cyrus's side. She said something that made him laugh, touched his arm with perfect wifely affection. She caught my eye for just a second. The message was clear. We can do this. I squeezed Gabriel's hand and laughed at something the mayor said, playing my role perfectly. But inside, something had shifted. I wasn't alone anymore. Neither of us was. We had each other. We had a plan. We had, for the first time in months, something terrifying and precious and dangerous. We had hope. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I say it's a dish best served with meticulous planning, burner phones, and a healthy dose of terror that keeps you awake at 3 a.m. wondering if you've just signed your own death warrant. 1 month after that bathroom conversation, Freya and I had become experts at living double lives. We met at a cafe on the south side of town, the kind of place where nobody recognized Mrs. Gabriel Vega or the future mayor of Veridian. I wore a wig brunette instead of my natural dark hair and sunglasses that covered half my face. Freya had ditched her usual polished look for jeans and a baseball cap. We looked like graduate students meeting for coffee, not two women plotting to dismantle a criminal empire. "This is insane," Freya said, stirring her latte with hands that trembled slightly. "We're actually doing this." Too late for second thoughts now. I slid a piece of paper across the table. "Here's the plan. Gabriel has a business dinner Thursday night. He'll be gone for at least 3 hours. That's my window." "What about security?" "Vincent does rounds every 45 minutes. I'll have time between patrols." I didn't mention that my hands shook every time I thought about it. "I need to get into his study, photograph everything I can find. Financial records, communications, anything that proves what he's doing." Freya nodded, pulling out her own notes. "I'm working the political angle. There are people at City Hall, law enforcement, prosecutors who aren't on Gabriel's payroll. I'm identifying who we can trust." "How do you know they're clean?" "I've been watching, listening. The ones Gabriel's people avoid, the ones who don't get invited to certain meetings." She paused. "There's a prosecutor, Morgan Vance. He's been trying to build cases against the syndicate for years. I think we should bring him in." My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. "Morgan? You know him." "He was..." I stopped, swallowed hard. "He was my boyfriend, before Gabriel." Freya's eyes widened. "Oh, Chandler, I'm sorry, I didn't..." "No, it's fine. It's good, actually." And it was, in a painful way. Morgan was one of the only people I trusted completely. "He'll help us." "I know he will." Thursday night, Gabriel kissed my forehead before leaving for his dinner meeting. "You're sure you're feeling all right, darling?" I could cancel. "No, please." I touched my temple with what I hoped looked like weary gratitude. "It's just a headache. I'll take something and go to bed early." "Rest well." He squeezed my shoulder, and I felt the weight of ownership in that touch. "I'll be back late." I watched from the window until his car disappeared. Then I waited, counted the minutes until Vincent completed his first round. When I heard his footsteps fade down the hallway, I moved. Gabriel's study was supposed to be off limits. Not that he'd ever explicitly forbidden me, he didn't need to. The message was clear in the way he locked the door, the way Vincent always seemed to be nearby when I passed it. But I'd watched Gabriel punch in the code enough times. 6 digits. Our wedding date. The arrogance of it almost made me laugh. The study was exactly what you'd expect from a criminal mastermind with expensive taste. Mahogany desk, leather chairs, art that probably cost more than most people's houses. I pulled out my phone, the real one, not the monitored one I left charging in the bedroom, and started photographing everything. Bank statements showing millions moving through shell corporations. Encrypted communications that mentioned shipments and territory. A ledger with names. I recognized city councilmen, police captains, judges, all on Gabriel's payroll, with amounts listed next to each name like they were groceries. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone steady. Then I found the expansion plans. Maps of the city with neighborhoods marked in red. The poorest areas, the places where people were already struggling, already dying. Gabriel planned to flood them with product, eliminate the competition, create a monopoly on destruction. There were projected profit margins, growth charts. It was laid out like a legitimate business plan, except the product was poison, and the collateral damage was measured in lives. I copied everything to a flash drive, photographing backup copies with my phone. Somewhere in the penthouse, I heard a door close. Vincent, finishing his rounds. I had maybe 2 minutes. I put everything back exactly as I'd found it, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. Locked the study. Made it back to the bedroom just as Vincent's footsteps approached. I was under the covers, lights off, when I heard him pause outside my door. "Please don't check. Please don't check." He moved on. I didn't breathe for a full minute. Meanwhile, across town, Freya was having her own dangerous meeting. She'd reached out to Morgan through official channels, requesting a consultation about her campaign's anti-corruption platform. They met at his office after hours, when the courthouse was empty. "Mrs. Serrano," Morgan said carefully, too carefully. "What can I do for you?" "It's about the syndicate." Freya closed the door behind her. "And about Chandler Moretti." She told me later that Morgan's face had transformed at my name. All professional distance vanished. Is she safe? Where is she? I've been trying to reach her for months. She's alive. She's trapped. She's married to Gabriel Vega. Freya watched understanding and horror dawn across his face. And she's helping me gather evidence to bring him down. Morgan sank into his chair. She married Vega. Jesus. Her father's debts? She didn't have a choice. Freya slid the flash drive across his desk. But she's making one now. We both are. Morgan plugged it in, and Freya watched his expression shift as he scrolled through the files. This is incredible. Financial records, communications. This is enough to start building a case. He looked up. But we need more. We need something that directly ties Gabriel and Cyrus to specific crimes. Something violent, undeniable. Something expensive lawyers can't explain away. We're working on it. Tell Chandler, his voice caught. Tell her to be careful. Tell her I'm here. Tell her. I'll tell her. That same night, Gabriel and Cyrus sat in a private room at Veridian's most exclusive restaurant, discussing their empire over 20-year-old scotch. The expansion moves forward next month, Gabriel said, swirling amber liquid in crystal. We eliminate the competition, take control of distribution in the southern districts. After this, we'll own the entire city. Cyrus nodded, but there was tension in his shoulders. Security concerns? Everyone's been vetted. Everyone knows what happens to traitors. Gabriel's smile was colder than the ice in their drinks. Besides, who would betray us? The people closest to us are the least likely suspects. That's why family is so useful. They have too much to lose. And if someone did talk? Then we'd make an example, like we always do. Gabriel raised his glass. To family, to loyalty, to Veridian being ours. They drank. Neither of them suspected that their wives, those useful, decorative, underestimated wives, were at that very moment planning their destruction. A week later, Freya and I met again at our cafe. I handed her the flash drive with shaking hands. There's so much, I said. Financial records, expansion plans, names. Freya, they're going to flood the poorest neighborhoods with drugs. There are profit projections measured in how many people will become addicts. Morgan says it's good. Really good. But we need more. I know. I wrapped my hands around my coffee cup. If we do this, if we really do this, there's no going back. They'll either be in prison, or we'll be dead. Freya met my eyes. I know. I've thought about nothing else for a month. We sat in silence for a moment, two women who'd somehow ended up on the front lines of a war we'd never wanted to fight. Well, I said finally, surprised by my own dark laugh. At least we'll die knowing we tried. That's more than we had a month ago. That's the spirit, Freya deadpanned. Nothing says female empowerment like probable death sentences. Should we add that to your campaign slogan? Vote Freya Stein, probably getting murdered soon. We laughed, slightly hysterical. Two women who'd found friendship in the strangest, most dangerous place possible. But we were committed now. The game was in motion, and we were going to see it through to the end, whatever that end might be. 3 months into our private war, I made my first real mistake. It was supposed to be routine. Gabriel had another dinner meeting. They were becoming more frequent as the expansion plans progressed. I had my window, my practiced routine. Vincent's rounds were predictable as clockwork. I knew exactly how much time I had. Morgan needed more evidence. Financial records were damning, but lawyers could explain away numbers. What we needed were communications, emails, messages, anything proving Gabriel personally ordered violence. The kind of evidence that couldn't be spun by expensive legal teams. I found them. Encrypted messages to Cyrus, with dates, locations, names. Handle the detective. Make an example of the councilman. Remove the journalist permanently. Each one signed with Gabriel's digital signature. Each one a death sentence delivered with cold efficiency. I photographed everything. My hands steadier now than they'd been that first night. Practice makes perfect, even in crime. I was almost done when I noticed it. The file folder I'd looked through last time. It was in the wrong place. Just slightly. Maybe an inch to the left of where I'd carefully replaced it 3 weeks ago. My blood turned to ice. Gabriel knew. He knew someone had been in his office. I put everything back with trembling hands, checking and rechecking placement, angles, everything. But it was too late. He'd already noticed. He was watching, waiting to see who'd make the next move. Over the following week, Gabriel didn't confront me. That would have been less terrifying. Instead, he became more attentive, more present. Vincent started making rounds every 30 minutes instead of 45. New cameras appeared in hallways I'd never noticed being monitored before. Gabriel began suggesting I stay home from my usual charity luncheons. "I worry about you, darling," he said over breakfast, his tone gentle in a way that made my skin crawl. "The city's becoming dangerous. I'd feel better knowing you're safe at home." Translation: "I'm limiting your movements until I figure out if you're the leak." At dinner that Thursday, Gabriel set down his wineglass and said casually, "There's been a security breach. Someone close to our organization has been sharing information with prosecutors." I felt his eyes on me, studying my reaction. I took a bite of my salmon, chewed slowly, swallowed. "That's concerning. Have you found out who?" "Not yet." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "But I will. I always do." That same week, Cyrus told Freya he needed to travel for business. A 3-day trip to finalize deals with suppliers. He'd be unreachable. Freya waited 2 hours after he left before she started searching. She told me later that she'd known about the safe for months, had watched Cyrus open it once, memorized the combination. She'd been too afraid to look before. But with Morgan in danger, with everything escalating, she didn't have the luxury of fear anymore. The safe was behind a painting in Cyrus's home office. Inside, cash, a burner phone, and a manila folder filled with photographs. Freya recognized most of the faces. Councilman Roberto Martinez, who'd voted against rezoning that would have benefited the syndicate's operations. Journalist Sarah Chen, who'd been investigating corruption in city contracts. Detective James Foster, who'd been asking too many questions about unsolved murders in the warehouse district. Each photo had a red X marked across the face. Completed hits, people who'd been eliminated. But the photo that made Freya's hands shake wasn't marked yet. Morgan Vance, captured leaving the courthouse, unaware he was being watched, unaware he was being hunted. Her next target. She photographed everything, put it back exactly as she'd found it, and called me the second she got outside. "Morgan's on their list," she said without preamble, her voice shaking. "Chandler, they're going to kill him." I immediately texted Morgan from my burner phone. Told him to request protective detail, to be careful, to not go anywhere alone. He protested, said it would draw attention, but I told him the truth. Gabriel already suspected something. Better to be paranoid than dead. 2 days later, Gabriel came home from lunch with a strange expression. "Interesting news," he said, pouring himself a drink. "Your old boyfriend, the prosecutor, Morgan Vance. Did you know he's suddenly requested protective detail? Seems he thinks someone's after him." My heart stopped. That's terrible. Why would anyone? That's what I'm wondering. Gabriel's eyes were ice. What would make a prosecutor paranoid? Unless someone warned him. Unless someone told him he was in danger. The implication hung in the air between us like poison. "I'm sure he has many enemies," I said carefully, "given his work." "I'm sure." Gabriel smiled. Still, curious timing. Freya and I met that night in a parking garage on the east side. We'd chosen it because it was public but empty, visible but anonymous. We were getting paranoid. We had reason to be. "We should stop," Freya said immediately. "Gabriel knows something. Cyrus is suspicious. They're watching us. We can't stop now." I pulled out the flash drive with Gabriel's latest communications. "Look at what we have. Financial records, kill orders, names of everyone on their payroll. Freya, we're so close. If we stop now, we'll spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders, waiting for them to figure it out. But if we finish this, we might actually survive," Freya finished quietly. We were leaning against my car, going through evidence on my phone, when Freya suddenly stiffened. "Don't look now. Man at the garage entrance, dark jacket. He's watching us." My stomach dropped. "One of Cyrus's people?" "I think so. Chandler. We've been followed." Panic clawed at my throat. If they reported back that we were meeting secretly, if Gabriel or Cyrus started asking questions. "I have an idea," Freya said suddenly. She raised her voice, waving at the man. "Hey, are you Thomas? Thomas Brennan?" The man looked confused, walking closer. "No, Oh, I'm so sorry." Freya's politician smile was dazzling. I'm Freya Stein, running for mayor. I thought you were one of my campaign volunteers. This is Chandler. She's helping me with outreach in this district. Are you registered to vote? She spent 5 minutes talking at him about her campaign, asking about his concerns for the neighborhood, completely disarming him with her practiced charm. Finally, looking bewildered, he left. We waited until his car disappeared before either of us breathed. That was brilliant, I said. That was terrifying. Freya's hands were shaking. Chandler, they're hunting now. Actively hunting for whoever's betraying them. I know. Which means we need to accelerate our timeline. We need to finish gathering evidence and get it to Morgan before they figure out it's us. How much time do we have? I don't know. Weeks? Days? I met her eyes. But it's too late to back out. We're committed now. That night, Gabriel and Cyrus met in Gabriel's study. I wasn't there, but Gabriel told me later casually, like he was discussing the weather, that they'd had an interesting conversation. I think we have a mole problem, Gabriel had said. Impossible. Everyone's been vetted. Then we need to test their loyalty. All of them. Gabriel had smiled. We'll feed different information to different people. See what leaks. See who takes the bait. It was a classic counterintelligence technique, and if we weren't careful, it would expose us completely. The hunters had become the hunted, and the most dangerous game in Veridian was about to get much, much deadlier. 2 months before everything came crashing down, I learned that the hardest part of espionage isn't stealing secrets, it's pretending you haven't. Gabriel wanted me visible. Constantly. By his side at business dinners, charity auctions, private meetings with men whose suits cost more than most people's mortgages and whose hands were stained with crimes they'd never be charged with. I was the perfect prop, beautiful, well-bred, utterly harmless. Or so he thought. Darling, what do you think about the waterfront development? Gabriel asked at dinner one night, surrounded by city councilmen and business associates. His hand was on my knee under the table, possessive and warm, a test disguised as affection. I knew what the waterfront development really meant. I'd photographed the documents. It was a money laundering operation wrapped in legitimate real estate, designed to clean millions in drug profits. I tilted my head, playing the role I'd perfected. I think it sounds wonderful for the city. Will there be parks? I do love parks. The men laughed. Gabriel squeezed my knee, satisfied. That's my girl, always thinking about the community. But I was thinking about the community, memorizing faces, names, the way Councilman Rodriguez flinched when Gabriel mentioned settling accounts, the way Judge Morrison drank too much and talked too loosely about handling problematic cases, every detail, catalogued and reported to Morgan through encrypted messages sent from bathroom stalls and parking garages. The strain was destroying me from the inside out. I'd lost 10 pounds I couldn't afford to lose. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't achieve, even with pills. I jumped at every sound, every unexpected touch, every time Gabriel looked at me too long. He noticed. You're not yourself lately, Gabriel said one morning, his fingers tilting my chin up so I had to meet his eyes. There was something almost tender in his expression. Almost. Are you sleeping? Eating? I'm fine. Just tired. I forced a smile. All these social engagements. I'm not used to. You're losing weight. You look exhausted. His thumb brushed my cheekbone. I worry about you. The concern in his voice was the most terrifying thing I'd ever heard. Because it sounded genuine. Because somewhere in Gabriel Vega's twisted psychology, he actually believed he cared. I'll rest more, I promised. I'm just overwhelmed sometimes. This life is so different from what I knew before. He pulled me close, and I let him, breathing in his expensive cologne while my skin crawled. You're doing beautifully, he murmured. You're everything I knew you'd be. A perfect possession. A beautiful lie. Across town, Freya was fighting her own battle. Her mayoral campaign was surging in the polls. She was charismatic, passionate, the reformer Veridian needed, but reporters were starting to ask uncomfortable questions. At a press conference, a journalist raised his hand. Miss Stein, there have been rumors about your husband's business connections. Specifically, allegations linking him to the syndicate. Would you care to comment? Every camera turned to her. Every microphone waited. And Freya smiled that politician's smile that gave away nothing. My husband is a legitimate businessman who's worked incredibly hard to build his company from nothing. These baseless allegations are exactly what I'm running against, the kind of cynical smear tactics that poison our political discourse. Cyrus has been nothing but supportive of my campaign and my vision for a better Veridian. She said it perfectly, believed none of it, wanted to scream the truth at all of them. That night, Cyrus was waiting when she got home. "We need to talk." His voice was cold, controlled. "Did you say something to someone? About my business?" Freya's heart hammered, but she'd had months to learn this dance. "What?" "No. Cyrus, where is this coming from?" "That journalist, those questions. Someone's been feeding him information. It's my political opponents. They're trying to hurt my campaign by going after you." She let anger seep into her voice, genuine anger at having to defend a monster. "I'm getting close to winning, and they're desperate. They'll say anything." Cyrus studied her face. She held his gaze, steady, certain. Finally, he nodded. "You're probably right. I'm sorry. This expansion has me on edge." But Freya saw it. That flicker of doubt in his eyes. That moment of calculation. He wasn't entirely convinced. The walls were closing in on both of us. We met at Freya's campaign office after midnight, when her staff had gone home and the building was empty. I found her sitting in the dark, staring at nothing. "I can't do this anymore," she said without preamble. "I loved him, Chandler. For 15 years. I loved him. We built a life together. Had dreams together. And now I have to smile at him every night while knowing what he is, what he's done." Her voice cracked. How did I not see? I sat beside her, both of us exhausted beyond words. Sometimes I wonder if I should have just left with Morgan. Let my father face the consequences of his choices. Maybe I didn't need to be the martyr. Maybe I could have just chosen myself for once. But you didn't. You chose your family. That's not weakness. Isn't it? I traded my entire life because I couldn't say no. Because I've never been able to say no. We sat in silence, two women who'd given up everything, who were risking what little they had left. "When this is over," Freya said quietly, "assuming we survive, and that's a big assumption, let's actually stay friends this time. Real friends, not just childhood memories." "What, weekly brunch? Book club?" I managed a weak laugh. I was thinking more like survivors of attempting to take down a criminal empire support group. Very exclusive membership. We'd need better snacks than your average support group. Obviously, I'm thinking champagne. We've earned it. The absurdity of planning post-takedown brunches, while our husbands were actively hunting for whoever was betraying them, struck us both simultaneously. We started laughing, slightly hysterical, tears mixing with exhaustion and terror. My phone buzzed. Morgan. I read his message and felt my stomach drop. Morgan says the case is almost ready, but he needs one more piece. Direct evidence linking Gabriel and Cyrus to a specific, recent crime. Something violent. Something their lawyers can't explain away. How are we supposed to? The Veridian annual gala. In 2 months. I showed her Morgan's intelligence report. They're planning to eliminate their last major competition. If we can document it happening, then we'll have everything we need. Freya's expression hardened. Or we'll be dead. Probably both, knowing our luck. We exchanged dark smiles, women who'd learned to joke about their own potential murders. It was either laugh or scream, and we'd done enough screaming in private. 2 months, I said. We just have to survive 2 more months. And gather evidence at the biggest social event of the year while our husbands are committing murder. When you say it like that, it sounds impossible. That's because it is impossible. Good thing we're not the kind of women who let impossible stop us anymore. I drove home to Gabriel, who was waiting with dinner he'd had catered from my favorite restaurant. Freya went home to Cyrus, who kissed her forehead and asked about her day. We both smiled. We both lied. We both counted down the days until either freedom or death. 2 months, 8 weeks, 56 days. The final act was approaching, and neither of us was sure we'd survive the performance. 1 month before the end, Gabriel finally showed me just how dangerous he really was. I was in the hallway when I overheard them, Gabriel and Cyrus, in the study, speaking in the kind of low tones that meant the conversation was serious. I froze, holding my breath. "We have a leak," Gabriel said flatly. "Someone with access to operational details has been feeding information to prosecutors." "You're certain?" "Morgan Vance has information he shouldn't have. Financial records, communications, details about the expansion. Someone gave it to him." My heart stopped. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I stayed perfectly still. I've narrowed it down to a small group, Gabriel continued. Here's what we do. We feed different pieces of false information to different people. See which fake intel reaches Vance. Classic counterintelligence. The leak will expose themselves. I'll do the same with my people, Cyrus said. I backed away silently, my mind racing. If Gabriel fed me false information and it reached Morgan, I was dead. I had to warn them immediately. That night, I sent an encrypted message to Freya. They're testing for leaks. Feed different info to different people. Tell Morgan we can't react to any new intelligence for the next month. Radio silence. 2 days later, Cyrus came home with Chinese takeout and a smile. He kissed Freya's forehead, asked about her campaign, settled beside her on their couch like he'd done for 15 years. Gabriel's planning something big for the gala, he mentioned casually, watching her face. A surprise announcement that will cement our position in the city permanently. A new partnership that will make us untouchable. Freya's political instincts kicked in immediately. She smiled, interested, but not too interested. Really? What kind of partnership? Is it a legitimate business expansion? Can't say yet. Gabriel wants it to be a surprise. He squeezed her hand. But it's going to change everything. You'll be married to one of the most powerful men in Veridian. I already am, she said, and made herself lean into him, made herself play the loving wife, while her mind screamed. It was a test. Everything was a test now. We met at Lincoln Park the next afternoon, both of us taking elaborate precautions. Different routes, changed outfits in public bathrooms, checked constantly for tails. We were paranoid because we had every reason to be. Maybe we should stop, Freya said immediately. She looked exhausted, hollowed out. We've gathered enough evidence. Morgan has financial records, communications. Maybe that's sufficient. It's not. You know it's not. Lawyers will argue reasonable doubt, claim the evidence is circumstantial. Better circumstantial evidence than both of us dead. Freya. Her phone rang. She glanced at the screen, frowned, answered. Hello? Yes, this is she. I watched her face transform, watched color drain from her cheeks, watched her hand start shaking. When? She whispered. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'll be there. Of course I'll be there. She hung up, stared at nothing. That was Maria Santos. Her daughter, Isabella, 17 years old. Freya's voice broke. Overdose. She's dead. Freya. Maria used to babysit me when I was a kid. Isabella was in my youth leadership program. She wanted to be a doctor. Freya's hands were shaking. She's dead because Gabriel and Cyrus flooded her neighborhood with poison, because we haven't stopped them yet. The funeral was 3 days later. Small, devastating, a community torn apart. I went with Freya, officially there to support her campaign, unofficially watching a woman we were trying to save the city for bury the collateral damage of our husband's empire. Maria Santos stood by the casket, looking 20 years older than the last time Freya had seen her. Around us, families who'd lost children, siblings, parents to the drugs that funded Gabriel's penthouses and Cyrus's lifestyle. The human cost, made devastatingly real. Freya broke down in the parking lot afterward. We can't stop. We can't. Look at what they're doing. Look at what they've destroyed. I know. If we quit now, Isabella died for nothing. All of them died for nothing. I know, I said again, holding her while she cried. We're seeing this through. Whatever it costs. That night, we met Morgan in a secure location, a FBI safe house, because the case had escalated beyond local prosecution. Federal agents were building a RICO case now. Organized crime, conspiracy, racketeering. If we succeeded, Gabriel and Cyrus would spend the rest of their lives in prison. If we succeeded, we have most of what we need, Morgan said, spreading files across the table. But that final piece, direct evidence of violence, of murder, would make this airtight. At the gala, we'll have undercover agents positioned throughout the venue. Recording devices. We'll be ready to move the second you give us the location and timing of the hit. And if something goes wrong, Freya asked, then we extract you both immediately. Your safety is the priority. After the briefing, Morgan pulled me aside. His eyes were the same earnest ones I'd fallen in love with in college, before my life became this nightmare. When this is over, he said quietly, you can leave him. You can finally leave, and we can... Morgan, I stopped him gently. When this is over, I need time to figure out who I am outside of being Antonio Moretti's daughter, or Gabriel Vega's wife, or even your girlfriend. I need to be just Chandler for a while. He looked hurt, but he nodded. I understand. I'll wait. I'm not asking you to wait. I'm asking you to understand that I can't jump from one cage to another, even if the second one comes with love instead of threats. You've changed. I had to. The woman you knew in college? She died the day I married Gabriel. 3 days before the gala, Gabriel called me into his study, poured 2 glasses of wine, gestured for me to sit. The atmosphere was heavy with unspoken tension. I know someone close to me has been betraying me, he said without preamble. I know they've been feeding information to prosecutors, to Morgan Vance specifically. My throat closed. This was it. He knew. After everything, he'd figured it out. But I also know it's not you. Gabriel took my hand, his touch almost tender. You're too transparent, Chandler. Too naive to pull off something like this. It's one of the things I love about you, your simplicity. The insult wrapped in affection. The dismissal wrapped in trust. That's why I need you at the gala, he continued. Visible, beside me, the perfect wife. My proof that I'm a legitimate businessman, not what they say I am. You're my alibi, darling, my shield of respectability. I managed to nod, to smile, to play the role he'd assigned me. Of course, whatever you need. He kissed my forehead. That's my girl. After he left, I sat in that study for a long time, staring at nothing. Gabriel's arrogance, his certainty that I was too simple, too naive, too transparent, to be the one destroying him that was the only reason I was still alive. He'd underestimated me because I was a woman, because I was pretty and well-mannered and played the role he'd written for me. It was the last mistake he'd ever make. 1 month, 4 weeks, 28 days. The gala was approaching. The trap was set. And 2 women everyone had underestimated were about to show Veridian exactly what they were capable of. And then, finally, we arrived at the night that would either save us or destroy us. The Veridian Annual Gala, the same event I'd described at the beginning of this story. The night everything came full circle. I stood in my crimson gown, blood red, appropriately feeling the weight of diamonds against my throat like a beautiful noose. Across the ballroom, Freya blazed in emerald green, every inch the political star, the future mayor. We looked like we belonged in this world of crystal chandeliers and champagne fountains and people who'd never known what it meant to be afraid. We were terrified. Scattered through the crowd were FBI agents in formal wear, indistinguishable from the elite guests sipping $100 wine and discussing $1 million deals. Morgan stood near the entrance, earpiece hidden, coordinating the operation that would either end the syndicate or end us. Gabriel was in his element. He gave a speech about his foundation's humanitarian work, the irony so thick I could taste it, while the crowd applauded his generosity. I stood beside him, smiling, the perfect wife, while inside I was counting seconds until this beautiful nightmare finally ended. Thank you all for your continued support, Gabriel concluded, his hand finding mine. Together, we're building a better Veridian. The applause was thunderous. I wanted to scream the truth at all of them. After the speech, Gabriel was immediately pulled into conversations with politicians and business leaders. I was scanning the crowd for Freya when Cyrus appeared, extending his hand to his wife. Dance with me? I watched them move to the floor, and even from across the room, I could see the tension in Freya's shoulders. Then I saw her expression change, saw fear flash across her face. Later, she told me what he'd whispered against her ear. I know you've been lying to me. Her heart had stopped. What? I know you've been meeting with someone. I had you followed last week. Freya had thought faster than she ever had in her life. You mean my campaign strategist? The one with the progressive agenda you said would make me look too radical? She'd pulled back, genuinely angry now. You've been having me followed? During a campaign? Cyrus, do you understand what that looks like if anyone finds out? I needed to know. You needed to trust me. God, this is exactly the kind of insecurity my opponents would love to exploit. She'd turned the tables perfectly, making him defensive, making him the one who'd overstepped. He'd looked uncertain, almost convinced, but not quite. I need to handle some business. We'll talk about this later. He'd left her on the dance floor, and Freya had immediately caught my eye. Mouthed, East Wing. That's when I saw him. Dmitry Volkov. leader of the Russian syndicate that had been competing with Gabriel for control of the city's drug trade. The competition Gabriel planned to eliminate tonight. Volkov was being escorted toward a private room off the main ballroom, clearly expecting a negotiation. He was walking into an execution. I pulled out my phone, texted Freya. "Private room, East Wing. It's happening." Before I could signal Morgan, Gabriel's hand closed around my arm. "There you are, darling. I need you with me for the next part. It's important you're visible right now." "Of course," I heard myself say, even as panic clawed at my throat. I was supposed to be able to move freely, to coordinate with Morgan. But Gabriel was keeping me close, his instincts finally kicking in at the worst possible moment. Freya moved through the crowd toward the East Wing, champagne glass in hand, every inch the politician working the room. She saw Cyrus and 3 of his men heading in the same direction. Saw the way they moved, purposeful, predatory. This was it. She caught Morgan's eye across the ballroom, touched her right earring the signal. FBI agents began moving into position. Everything happened at once. In the private room, Cyrus and his men confronted Volkov. I learned the details later from Morgan, from the recordings. Volkov had realized too late that this wasn't a meeting. Weapons were drawn. Cyrus raised his gun. The FBI burst in. "Federal agents, drop your weapons." Gunfire erupted. In the ballroom, the first shot sounded like champagne corks. Then someone screamed. Then chaos. Gabriel's head snapped toward the sound, and I watched realization dawn across his face. His grip on my arm tightened painfully. "What did you do?" For 6 months, I'd played a role. The naive wife, the dutiful daughter, the woman too simple to be dangerous. But I was done performing. I met his eyes steadily. "I stopped you." His expression transformed into something terrifying. Pure rage, pure betrayal. His hand moved toward his jacket. "FBI, hands where I can see them." Agents surrounded us, weapons drawn. Morgan was there, positioning himself between Gabriel and me, and for the first time in months, I felt safe. "You bitch," Gabriel hissed as they cuffed him. "You have no idea what you've done. No idea what's coming for you. Mr. Vega, you're under arrest for racketeering, conspiracy to commit murder, drug trafficking." The agent's voice continued, reading rights Gabriel had never believed would apply to him. They led him away, still screaming threats, still unable to believe that I, his pretty, naive, transparent wife, had destroyed him. In the East Wing, Cyrus had fought. Of course he had. He was Gabriel's enforcer, his weapon, and weapons don't surrender easily. But there were too many agents, too many guns, too much evidence caught on, too many recording devices. Freya stood in the hallway, frozen, as they dragged him past her in handcuffs. Their eyes met. She expected hatred. She saw betrayal, yes, rage, absolutely. But there was something else beneath it all. Something that looked almost like respect. Like he'd finally seen his wife clearly, and understood what she was capable of. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Though whether she meant it for him or for herself, she didn't know. He said nothing. They took him away. The ballroom was pandemonium. Guests screaming, crying, demanding answers. Press somehow already on scene, cameras flashing, emergency services flooding in. The social event of the season had become the crime bust of the decade. I found Freya in the chaos. We didn't speak. We just stood together, watching as police tape went up, as evidence was collected, as the empire we'd spent 6 months dismantling finally, completely collapsed. Morgan approached, professional concern on his face. "Chandler, are you hurt? We need to get you." "I'm fine." I was shaking, tears streaming down my face, but I was fine. Better than fine. "I'm free." They separated us for debriefing, standard procedure. But before they led me away, Freya caught my hand, squeezed hard. "We did it," she said. And she was crying too, smiling too, laughing too, all of it at once. "We survived," I managed. "We survived," she echoed. And for the first time in 6 months, I believed we actually would. Pause. 6 months after the night that changed everything, I woke up in an apartment that was entirely my own. No Egyptian cotton sheets worth more than a car. No marble bathrooms with gold fixtures. No security guards outside my door. Just a modest 2-bedroom in a neighborhood where people knew their neighbors' names, where I could walk to the corner coffee shop without anyone watching, cataloging, reporting my movements. It was the most beautiful place I'd ever lived. Freya won the mayoral election in a landslide. The headlines wrote themselves: corruption fighter takes City Hall. Woman who brought down the syndicate becomes mayor. She could have hidden from her connection to Cyrus. Let spin doctors craft a narrative of victimhood. Instead, she stood at her inauguration and told the truth. I was blind to corruption in my own home, she said, her voice carrying across City Hall steps to the crowd of thousands. I let my ambition override my judgment. I was complicit through my silence, through my willful ignorance, but I learned that true strength isn't about being perfect. It's about acknowledging our mistakes and working to fix them. The applause was deafening. Veridian loved her more for her honesty than they ever would have for a perfect facade. She visited Cyrus once, only once. She told me about it over coffee, her hands wrapped around her mug like she needed the warmth. He looked smaller, she said. Prison orange instead of expensive suits. But his eyes were the same. Still Cyrus. What did he say? That he knew. Almost from the beginning, he knew I was working against him. Freya's voice was quiet. He said he could have stopped me. Could have. She stopped, swallowed hard. But some part of him wanted me to succeed, even if it meant his destruction. He said maybe that was the closest he ever got to actually loving me properly. Do you believe him? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe love and destruction aren't mutually exclusive for someone like Cyrus. She met my eyes. Our relationship was real and a lie at the same time. I'll carry that complexity forever. I understood, because Gabriel sends me letters, every week, like clockwork. Thick envelopes with his precise handwriting, filled with manipulation disguised as affection, threats wrapped in concern, attempts to maintain control even from behind bars. I don't read them anymore. The first few, yes, I needed to see that he was still trying, still believing he could bend me to his will. But now they go directly into the trash. I'm done being controlled. I'm in graduate school now, finally pursuing the linguistics degree I'd abandoned for my father's expectations. I'm studying conflict resolution and international mediation. Maybe I can take the worst experience of my life and turn it into something that helps others escape their own prisons. I'm also in therapy, lots of therapy, working through years of conditioning that taught me my value came from being useful to men, learning to say no, learning that choosing myself isn't selfish, it's survival. Morgan wanted to pick up where we left off, wanted to be my knight in shining armor, the man who'd saved me. Except I'd saved myself, and I needed him to understand that. We're rebuilding slowly, coffee dates, long walks, conversations where I set boundaries and he slowly, imperfectly learns to respect them. Maybe we'll work out, maybe we won't. But for the first time in my life, I'm making the choice on my own terms. Every Wednesday, Freya and I meet at a small cafe, not the one where we used to plan in secret, somewhere new, somewhere ours. We talk about her city council battles, my grad school papers, the absurdity of our shared past. Remember when we thought planning our husband's downfall over champagne was weird? Freya said last week, laughing into her oat milk latte. I still say oat milk is unnecessary, I countered. You're wrong, and you have terrible taste in coffee beverages, says the woman who orders drinks that sound like a chemistry experiment. This is what friendship looks like when you've been through war together. Inside jokes about attempted takedowns of criminal empires. Dark humor about the time we almost died. The easy comfort of someone who understands exactly what you survived because they survived it too. Veridian is healing. Slowly, imperfectly, but healing. Drug overdoses are down 30%. The neighborhoods that were hardest hit are getting resources, real resources, not just photo ops. Freya's administration is systematically dismantling the corruption that allowed the syndicate to flourish. It's not perfect. There's still crime, still challenges, still people who fell through cracks we couldn't close. But there's hope. That's more than we had a year ago. Last week, Freya and I attended a memorial for victims of the drug epidemic. Maria Santos was there, Isabella's mother, the woman who'd lost her daughter to the poison Gabriel and Cyrus had spread through the city. She hugged Freya, thanked us both, and I saw in her eyes what our fight had meant. Not just justice, not just revenge, but the possibility that fewer mothers would stand where she stood, grieving children who'd never had a chance. As we left, walking through the city we'd helped save, I said what I'd been thinking for months. I spent so long trying to be who others needed me to be. My father's perfect daughter, Gabriel's perfect wife, even Morgan's perfect girlfriend. I forgot I could just be myself. Freya nodded. And I was so focused on what I wanted to achieve, mayor, reformer, savior, that I forgot why I wanted to achieve it. We both lost ourselves for a while. But we found each other. And that helped us find ourselves again. We walked in comfortable silence, two women who'd been through hell and somehow came out the other side. Not unchanged, we'd never be the people we were before. But maybe that was okay. Maybe the women we'd become, scarred, strong, finally free, were exactly who we were meant to be. Somewhere in a federal prison, Gabriel Vega still believed he'd owned me. Somewhere in another cell, Cyrus Serrano probably still loved Freya, in his broken, violent way. But their beliefs, their feelings, their attempts to control us, none of it mattered anymore. We'd won. Not just the case, not just our freedom. We'd won ourselves back. And that, in the end, was everything. But wait before you go. I need to tell you something. Chandler and Freya's story doesn't end here. Because 6 months after the gala, a letter arrived at Freya's office. No return address. Just a single line written in elegant script. Your husbands weren't the only ones who underestimated their wives. We need to talk. Part 2 is coming. If you want to be the first to know when the next chapter drops, hit that subscribe button right now. Your engagement actually matters. Every like tells me you want more stories like this. Every share introduces another person to Chandler and Freya's journey. Every comment lets me know what resonates with you, what you want to see next, what characters you're dying to hear more about.